good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are on this very fine Tuesday. My name is Joe Hedrick, one of the team managers here at IMAGINiT, and also kind of the de facto product manager for the utilities for Civil 3D. So I'm excited to be able to show these off again this year. This year is going to be a little bit different, probably in that we've got a whole lot of utilities to show. We have steadily been, increasing the number of the utilities to where I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get through all of them, but we are most definitely going to talk about what's new. We're going to talk about the most popular utilities, and I'm still going to leave some time for questions at the end. So just a little bit about me, in case you've never, heard me present or we've been able to work together in the past. I do have a civil engineering degree from Old Dominion University. I worked in the private sector for about 5 years. I worked in the public sector as assistant city surveyor, in an adjacent city to the city of Virginia Beach, the city of Portsmouth. For about 3.5 years. I've been a professional geek here at IMAGINiT for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in September. It's amazing how that crept up, on me, but it's been a great ride. And I've got my survey license. I can sit for my PE really whenever I want to slow down long enough and take the test. But I focus on really the civil survey and data management products for IMAGINiT. So speaking of the utilities, like I mentioned before, we are up to 15 very purpose-built tools designed to make life easier. And I say everyday tasks because really everybody on this call, you're the reason why these utilities exist. There's almost 15 people on our team now, and as we go across the United States and Canada, really talking to different clients, working with them, implementations, trainings, things like that. We make notes when people say, "Hey, it'd be really great if it did it like this," or "Why can't it do it like that?" And we have a way to number one, capture and log that data. Number two, every year. We take a look at our lists. We figure out a way to rank that information to, hey, this is the most requested, things like that. And every year we try to select one or two utilities to add to our suite. So keep that information coming. If you've got a burning idea, I personally would love to hear it. My email address will be available at the end of this. Feel free to send that information over. But as you can see, we're amassing quite a list. And absolutely the most popular ones are the Google tools. They've been around ever since really Autodesk did away with the Google tools inside of Civil 3D. But our pipe tools are quickly I should say the piping tools are in a very solid second place. So those are the ones that we really chose to focus on this year. What I'll do is, we'll talk about what we've added because this is what's new, and then I'm going to run through, just kind of highlight, talk about each of the other utilities, and then we are going to show as much as we can live. But with the gravity pipe utilities, we added one brand new tool it's a pipe clearance utility is what we're calling it. But really what it allows us to do is label the distance in between pipes that cross. So we know that Autodesk has had a tool for interference detection really for quite some time inside of Civil 3D, but other than telling you whether it clashes or not, that's about all you can do with it. So we wanted to be able to figure out a way to, hey, what's the distance between these pipes, and that's what we created. So we'll take a look at that, and then we updated a previous tool. And Quick Edit Pipes is, of all the piping utilities, is the most popular. It's the one that's used the most. But Quick Edit Pipes was also the only utility that we had that only would work in plan view. All the other ones allow you to select, either structures or pipes in plan or profile view, but Quick Edit Pipes had to work in plan view. So we went back to work on that utility. We did make some other under the hood updates to it that I think will make it work a whole lot better, especially for drawings that are in metric units. But Quick Edit Pipes, I'm very happy to announce, now works in a profile view as well. So along with those two utilities, we've got the ones that have been around for a couple of years now to be able to swap multiple structures at the same time, to be able to, I'm going to say kind of globally, but it's really up to you how much of the run that you select to be able to, push consistent slopes, or just tell it a starting invert, an ending invert, and let it calculate the slopes for you. Or we've got tools to just globally, raise or lower an entire run or a subset of an entire run. So those tools have been around for a while. We're still going to, I'm going to make a point to show those because they're still very popular. But basically the pipe crossing utility is the new utility for 2021, and being able to do Quick Edit Pipes in plan view. Auto offset was our very first utility. It is somewhat purpose-built to help annotate topographic surveys. So for anyone that has to do an annotate strip topo, maybe between a right-of-way, labeled by station and offset, and maybe some point elevations and what it is, this utility is definitely for you. Make sure you check that out. The labels are Civil 3D objects, so should that alignment change, all of that annotation is going to change and update with it. We've got a utility for basically creating a report of point information combined with alignment information. For a long time, people have wanted to be able to have both of these together. Basically give me point number, north and easting elevation description, but also tell me the station and offset. And that's a little bit difficult to do with Civil 3D right now, just because it's a combination of a couple of different reports, and having the splice that information together, it's just a little bit harder than it needed to be. So there is a utility for that. By far, our most popular utility is import from Google. And I'm just going to say import from Google, import from Bing, because at this point, these utilities work identically. The only difference between them is the data source. So if you recall, way back in Civil 3D 2012, that was the last year that there was Google Earth integration with Civil 3D. And if you recall, the way that worked was, number one, you had to have Google Earth installed, and you zoomed in from Google Earth the area that you cared about, and then there was a routine that you flipped over the Civil 3D and you said, import from Google Earth, and whatever was on the screen in Google Earth, it kind of sucked it into the Civil 3D. It also had the ability to bring in terrain information. Well, that unfortunately went away. We had to do without for a year, and then IMAGINiT created this particular utility. And ours is a little bit different in that we use the Google Maps API. So really that's just geek speak for, right? We're using the exact same imagery that you find on your phone. Right, so if anybody goes to Google Maps on their phone, we're using the same mechanism for this. There is a point where Google limits us to the resolution of imagery that they'll service, but for really nice zoomed in areas, this works great. Uh, Another benefit of this tool is you don't have to have anything else installed on your system. So you don't have to have Google Earth installed at all. You click the button to import from Google Earth. It launches an area. That area that you see in the box will match where you are inside of CAD. So we're actually pulling the coordinate information and ultimately lat long of where your screen is, where your line work is. So you don't have to worry about panning and zooming or anything like that, typing in addresses. Literally we tried to make this as easy as possible. So, click the button, click OK, and it will bring in the image. We also give you an option to bring in surface information. Again, very similar to how that worked with Google Earth, but this is something that once Autodesk did away with that, they've never brought that mechanism back in any shape, manner, or form. So our utility is a little bit unique in that matter. We've got a couple of, I'm just going to call them somewhat survey-focused utilities. One of them is one that we call Flatten Explode feature lines. For anybody, if you have ever exploded a feature line, what happens in curves is it tessellates, or put another way, you get short line segments that approximate that curve. And this is what we wanted to do away with. We wanted an exact 2D polyline of the three-dimensional shape. So that's what our utility does. No curve tessellation at all. Curves remain intact. Creating offset points. One of the things that we heard, especially from surveyors, is that it was really difficult just to create stakeouts from basically corridor based information. And it used to be back in the day, we would work with clients and advise them to to use mark points inside of the corridor assembly, and that just it worked and it worked well, but that's really involved. Then it just what, I want to create points, offset X distance from this particular feature line, go. And that's what this utility does. Being able to generate profiles directly from points. And this is something, again, that was kind of driven by some surveyors that we worked with. But imagine if you go out and kind of maybe you're shooting topo along a particular ditch line, and really all you want to do is see a profile of that ditch or whatever feature that you're locating. And if you think about what you have to do to actually get to a profile, first thing is you have to have a surface, right? Then you got to create an alignment, then you got to sample it, then you got to plot it, all of that just to see a profile. So we wanted to come up with an easier way. We think we've done it. We allow you to select points. I'm just going to say by some method, whether you're picking them from the screen or from a point group or windowing them in, really however you want to select those points, and then pick where you want the profile view to go, and we take care of all the stuff in the background. We're still doing a lot of that stuff. We're still creating alignments and things like that. We just make it kind of somewhat transparent to the user. Along the way came the ability to import from Google Earth. Civil 3D has an export mechanism, but we wanted a way to quickly import the same Google Earth files, the KML or the KMZ files. One of the things that we have found, especially dealing with owners and at times even developers, nobody's, a lot of times these people don't have CAD, but they do have a representation in Google of what they want, whether it be their site or preliminary layout, what have you. And we wanted a way just to be able to quickly import this information. That's what this utility does. You simply select it, pick your file, and it brings it into to Civil 3D. Everything's geo-referenced and falls right into the appropriate place. All right, as we start to bring this or wrap this up, or at least for the PowerPoint side, the last utility is a utility that we use internally quite a bit for styles renaming. But the genesis of this really started kind of with reference templates. And if you think about anytime you want to bring or start to use somebody else's drawings, maybe somebody externally from your organization. Maybe you're picking up or taking over a project that somebody else started. You've got their drawings. You need to have a way to maybe, I want to make sure that this list of styles is denoted, accordingly as, hey, it's another company's list. Don't use them. What have you, or maybe you just need to go through and have come up with a better way to rename a bunch or to rename your styles, and you want a good batch way to do that. So that's really the origin of this particular utility, being able to find and replace inside of styles names, or being able to add a prefix to an entire list of styles or a suffix, by that matter. Everybody likes to do this a little bit differently. One of the things that we figured out very quickly was we were never going to get it right if we only did one thing. So we tried to build in as much flexibility to this as we could, whether it's prefixes, suffixes, or find and replace inside of the styles names. And then finally, my last slide before we jump to the live portion of this. But for more information, you are more than welcome. Please visit imaginit.com. At the very top, you'll see there's a square that I've highlighted. It's a software, and then you'll see IMAGINiT utilities within that flyout. So that's where you can get more information. As Lisa stated, these are free for all of our clients that subscribe to their Autodesk software through us. In my world, free is better than cheap. So that's a benefit. And for everybody else, there are trial versions available of these products, and you can purchase them as well. So that being said, let's get into the kind of the presentation here. And I'm going to start with the brand new stuff as I switch drawings here. There we go. And if you've seen me present before, this is you've seen this drawing before, and that's okay. I like to use this particular drawing just to show off some of the utilities, just because it makes them it's clean and you can really see what's going on. But when our utilities load, once you install them and activate them, you'll get an IMAGINiT ribbon. Honestly, as far as installation goes, as long as you install the utilities when you've got Civil 3D closed, when you open it up the next time, these things should just appear. So we've tried to make installation as seamless as possible here. But we'll get the IMAGINiT ribbon. This contains all of the tools, and for the piping ones, they are pretty much dead center in the middle of them, grouped within their own panel. And you'll see the quick edit pipes, and then gratings and elevations and swapping parts. But quick edit is the one that we updated, and the pipe clearance utility is the one that is the brand new one. So first things first with quick edit pipes, and the way that this has essentially always worked is you click on quick edit pipes. And I'm going to zoom in, and one of the things that we tried to do here was make this work as close to the quick edit feature line command as we could. And if you're familiar with that command, essentially what it allows you to do is hover over the nodes or the vertices of a feature line, and it would call out its elevation. So in this case, when I hover over a pipe, it's calling out its elevation as well. You can see in this case, by virtue of the tooltip, the elevation 621. You can also see right down here in the profile view that invert elevation is 621. But as we move around, I get, in this case, elevation 619.07, and that's that elevation or invert elevation right there. Hovering in the middle, we start to get slope tooltips. This is where we've done a little bit of behind the scenes or under the hood work to the utility to where now the slope that you get matches the direction of the pipe. So we'll see that, you know, as we progress in this direction, the pipe is sloping down at almost 2%, and the tooltip is telling me that. But at any point, I can just simply click. It'll ask me to, you know, enter a new slope. So maybe I just want negative 1.5. You know, hitting enter, you can see that, you know, that pipe, you know, updated accordingly, right? What is new here is that we can do this now in profile view. And as we start to move this around, depending on what you want to edit in profile view, right? We've always given you the ability with quick edit pipes to adjust whether it's inverts, whether it's center lines, or whether it's crown of pipes. That is a setting that's somewhat hidden, but if you go into the options under pipe tool options, here's the end type. And here's where you select what you want to modify. So if for whatever reason, we do default to invert, but if you want to default, if you want to change this to something else and adjust crowns or center lines, you can do that, and the little glyph location will adjust accordingly. But just you know, by maybe we wanted to let's see, make this, I don't know, negative 3%. Just like that, you know, we can see that that pipe updates. You know, maybe this one I want to make negative 2%, and vice versa. The pipes all update accordingly. So hopefully everybody will like that change, or really like that addition is the you know, kind of the better word for it. And once I close the command, everything updates, and you'll see that the labels up in plan view as well as profile view made that change, right? It's not until you actually edit that command do we write it back to the drawing database. Some of the other tools that were in here as far as just pipe modifications, we do have a pipe, you know, one that we call pipe grading, which basically allows us to pick one part. And you know, at this point, I'm going to basically pick structures, and it's going to ask me for a starting elevation. So we'll keep it at 621. And then it's going to ask me for a new grade. And this is a grade that we're going to push through the entire run. So if I wanted to make all of these, you know, minus 2%, you know, I could do that. I can, if I want to, enter a pipe drop at each structure. And just like that, we'll go through and adjust, you know, all of those pipe runs. This is a very, dare I say, a LAN desktop-ish type of a command. I know that you could do things like that way back in the day and LAN desktop, so we wanted to bring that information back. We've got utilities for pipe elevation, and this is again, you know, picking. You know, just picking, you know, a starting point and an ending point, and then it's going to ask me simply, do I want to raise or do I want to lower this? So maybe I want to lower this pipe run by, you know, 1.5 feet, and it will again adjust accordingly. Pipe invert actually came after those two utilities that I just showed you. We had created pipe grading. And then we got a whole lot of feedback saying, well, you know, what if, you know, okay, you're allowing me to, you know, select an invert and then push a grade through all the pipes. So what if I want to just basically, you know, give you a starting and an ending invert and let it calculate that grade for me? So in a lot of ways, this is the reverse calculation. But again, we can pick these two parts. It's going to ask me for a starting invert, and I'm just going to keep it at 619. You know, maybe in this case we'll round this off at 613. Again, a no drop across the structures if you want to. and it will go through and calculate that slope. And I realize it wasn't a huge change, but for the most part, they went from 2% to 1.9% there. So swap multiple parts is just that. It allows you to pick maybe multiple pipes or multiple structures and change their size and type all at one time. But the brand new utility for this year is pipe clearance. And with pipe clearance, one of the things that it will prompt with or start with is, you'll notice down below at the command line, it'll say select first pipe or options. Right now, the very first time you run this run this command, it's going to prompt you for options. The options is just going to pop up, and I'll tell you why that is. So if we say O for options, and then that opened up on a different screen, one of the things that we do is we're going to place the information inside of a note label style, right? So by default, it's not going to have a label style selected. And it's going to prompt this, you'll see this dialog box, and it's going to ask you to pick a label style. Now, as long as, subsequent drawings that you open, maybe because they're from your corporate template, have that same label style in it, you'll be fine. However, if you ever get to a point where you've got a label style selected that is not in the current drawing, you're going to see this dialog box again, and it's going to prompt you to pick a label style because it just doesn't know what style to use. So keep that in mind. And then you get to select what you want to be in the label. What do you want to label? Obviously, the way that we default this is we're going to tell you the distance between the two pipes. We're going to give you a northing and easting of the crossing location. But there's other things that we can pull. We can pull the pipe names if you want to. You can pull the network names. What networks do they belong to if you wanted to, as well as coordinates for the lowest point of the pipe on top and the highest point of the pipe on the bottom. So again, think about crossing information here. Those are the options, at least for now, to be able to select. And from here, we're just going to ask you to pick pipe 1 and pick pipe 2. So I'm going to pick this first pipe, and then I'll pick the second pipe. And you'll see we just slam a label right at the crossing location, but we'll be able to drag that off, and we can see that the vertical clearance is approximately 2.1 feet. Now, all of these precisions, I'm just going to go ahead and bring that up right now about the precisions, and that I realize that that's probably a little much. So what we are doing for precisions, in an effort not to just completely, I'm going to use the word, junk up that options dialog box. But like some of our other utilities, we look at the ambient settings in the drawing and pull the precision information from the ambient settings. So what that means is if we right click and go to edit drawing settings, we'll wait for that to pop up here, and we come over to ambient settings. So if we are looking at the coordinate value for this information. For the crossing, we are looking at the distance value. So just know that that's where you go to make those changes if you don't want to show to this degree. Should the other thing to note, should any of these pipes move, you'll need to rerun the utility to update the values. So those are the new commands. I hope everybody's excited about those. I want to make sure to save time for some questions. So I'm just going to kind of cherry pick and hit the highlights of a couple of other commands. But we'll think about or look at the Google commands here for just a second. This particular drawing is geo-referenced. It's in Florida. And if you'll notice, there's a deep view twist that's been applied to this drawing. So north is not even straight up. You can, if you look over in the upper right-hand corner of the drawing at the little view cube, you can see that north is pretty much to the right. But when it comes to the Google commands, just to the left of the piping commands, you'll see import from Google. When we select that, we get a dialog box that opens, and I will tell you that the center of my drawing canvas is the center of this box. So there's no reason to start panning around inside of this box. There's really no reason to search for an address or a location unless what you're starting with isn't georeferenced. But what you may want to do is just use the zoom tools and zoom in or zoom out. That looks good to me. And we get a couple of options. Three different commands here. Georeferenced image will do just that. It will import just the image into the drawing. Tin surface is just that. It's going to ask a couple of other questions for essentially X and Y intervals, but it's just going to bring the surface in. And image and tin is the combination of the aforementioned two. So for right now, I'm just going to say georeference image, and just like that, if we do a refresh, we do take care of putting it, behind all of the other geometry. If we zoom in and take a peek, it's definitely not bad imagery here. Let's see other things. So we are saving a PNG file. We are throwing it into the same directory as the drawing lives. So that's where you will find those. Going back and running it one more time just to kind of show you the terrain import features and functions. We'll zoom in there and we'll tell it a terrain surface. And when we hit OK here, it's going to ask for some options, and it's basically asking for X and Y intervals, right? So this is, a lot of this is essentially like USGS based information. So we all know those terrain maps. I mean, they're good to get kind of a rough idea of what flow conditions might be like on a surface. You may or may not, and probably tending to, you're probably not going to want to do a real huge detailed design based on them. However, for maybe pre-watershed analysis, pre-development analysis, it might be great for that. So I say that with keep in mind the data that you're using when you pick these intervals, right? We're going to tell you how many points that we're going to bring in. So if you look at this and I do maybe a 1 foot grid, right? That's a whole lot of points. That's over 1 million points. It's going to take time to stream all those points down. We are at the mercy of Google and how fast they want to serve this information to us. But yeah, I would argue that surface, with 1 foot intervals is going to be no better than a surface with 25 foot intervals, right? So just to, because we're getting a little short on time, I'm actually going to maybe say 75 foot intervals just to reduce the number of points here. And when we hit go, again, we are waiting on Google to return that information to us. Down in the bottom, we can see how fast it's working and going. So it's 87%. So it's almost done. And when we're done, when it is done, what we do is we take that information, we throw it into a surface, we display that surface using whatever default surface style is selected for that drawing. At this point, it's just a surface, and you can do with this really whatever you want. It's a Civil 3D surface. You can stylize it really however you like.